We'll start with the game that occurred today because, as Greg and I were saying yesterday during the men's lacrosse broadcast, Stony Brook is essentially an independent right now. The conference schedule doesn't mean any more than any other game because, of course, they are banned, at least for now, because we'll get into that in a few moments, banned from participating in conference tournament play. So no automatic qualifiers. They have to play the seasons as if they are independents, and that means non-conference schedule counts equally. And that is a concern because as the women's lacrosse team goes to Syracuse today, and they take on the number 3 team in the nation, they're number 4, depending on what poll you're following. But it doesn't matter. It's a top 5 matchup. And it played like that. It didn't take much to shift the balance the other way, though. Here's the problem. The problem was turnovers really did stick a dagger in the Seawolves' hopes of upsetting Syracuse at the Carrier Dome. Greg, I'm sure you and Ken, both of you, watched it, and I was able to call it here on WUSB. And seeing that, and also seeing a slightly different approach that 2 top-ranked teams take playing each other than they might playing a lesser opponent.
Yeah, going into the game, I'm going to have to say, just from, on face value of it, Syracuse really did have a step up because they had played 2 games already. So I thought that was a huge advantage for them. So they had gotten kind of some of the kinks out of their game early on. So they're going to see some of those turnover mistakes that you had referenced with the women's team. With 17 turnovers, that's hard for the women to overcome. And on the other end, they only had 5 caused turnovers, where Syracuse had 13 turnovers and 10 caused turnovers. So I think that's some of the that's the biggest difference right there when you look at the 2 games, or the 2 teams, in that game.
Yeah, agreed. And it's true in that sense that Syracuse did have to step up, head into this one. They're already 2-0, already faced some competition, beat New Hampshire, I believe, last time out too. So familiar with that America East style play. But yeah, for Stony Brook, with them essentially being an independent right now, and with this women's lacrosse team having the best shot out of all the Stony Brook programs in terms of advancing to an NCAA tournament at the end of the season, it added a lot more pressure to the game than it would, I think, another opener. And it really makes every game almost a must-win in that scenario, because without the automatic qualifier, nothing's insured, especially seeing, how Stony Brook has been ranked in the past few years with how good of the teams they've had. So, yeah, in that sense, it was definitely disappointing for as hard as they fought today, and taking no credit away from any of those women on the field. But it was a disappointing loss for them. It was a 1-goal loss. And it was a game of runs is really what it was, Matt. You saw, obviously hearing your broadcast and watching the game, the run at the end that the Orange were able to get was just enough to get them that advantage where they're able to hold on to the win. Because you remember during that middle part of the game, Stony Brook was the one coming back, and they ultimately took a 9-8 lead.
Absolutely. Now, what also I think really, first of all, yes, obviously credit has to go to Syracuse's defense, because so many times the Seawolves come running down the field ready to, even things up or pull ahead or really stick it to the Orange, and then all of a sudden the ball gets knocked out. They're their top players. Sabella had a couple of balls knocked out of her stick and a few others as well, and it ends up being a big stop for Syracuse coming back the other way. Yeah. Now, in many cases, the Seawolves were able to counter, but the main problem was they needed the goals, and they weren't able to get them at the most critical time. It really kind of played like the men's game did. We'll get into that too. That it was dead even, obviously, through the first 2 quarters, and then they started to pull out a little bit in the third quarter, and that's really where they made the lead stick.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, because it was right after, too. It was around that third quarter, I believe, where Stony Brook got the lead, and then timeout was called. And eventually from there, Syracuse was able to turn it around, really regroup under new head coach Kayla Trainer, and they're able to turn that into 4 straight goals of their own, and that shifted the momentum once again. And a big reason, as you said, was the turnovers. Stony Brook finished the game. Let me just make sure I have it here with 17 turnovers, and
Right.
you said great players like Serena Sabella had a couple. Kyla Zapolsky, who came in her first game as a Seawolf, had one. Hampel Rolls committed one. Kaylin Hart had 6 in the contest. Did no favors despite being one of the better attackers and feeders for the team, finishing with 3 assists, 3 points on the game.
Now, to be fair to Kaylin Hart, her role on that team also is big on the clear, and that's where a lot of her turnovers occurred. Not when the offense was setting up, and she always worked the right side, but really there. And she had the ball knocked out of her stick a few times, and yes, the 6 turnovers really stand out there, and it is unfortunate for because it isn't by any stretch entirely her fault. But a lot of the transition players had problems on the clears, and Syracuse made them pay.
And obviously the credit goes to defense on that front, as well as, again, having, those couple games in hand. But also it's what allowed Syracuse ultimately to win, just because it gave them more opportunities. They outshot the Seawolves 33-24. They had several more shots on goal. They had more offensive opportunities during the game, and it played a big part. And for as good as Charlie Campbell played in net today, they finished with 12 saves, 12 goals allowed, out of 500. Just getting outshot in that manner, Ozzy, is doing your team, your offense, any favors.
Well, one player in particular who worked the left side on offense, Megan Carney, had 7 points, 3 goals and 4 assists, and she also had 3 turnovers. But again, that was more of a function of her being in every play and really figuring into the action. Megan Terrell, 4 goals and assists. Emma Terrell, her sister, 1 goal and 2 assists. Emily Howershuk, 2 goals and an assist. But Howershuk, she was there for a crucial moment in the game because they were going with Kate Mashewski on faceoffs or on draws. I keep calling them faceoffs, but on draws, and the Seawolves were having a lot of success. Charlotte Verhulst, who took every draw for the Seawolves, she was doing pretty good. And then they make one little adjustment. They bring in Horashuk on a couple of the draws. Not only does Horashuk win them, but she also scores on them.
Yeah.
So that was a big moment in the game. But the funny thing about it is, you figure, okay, she's got her Verhulst figured out. Didn't happen. Okay, they went back to their usual setup. They went back to Mashewski, and the Seawolves had their chances. Okay.
Yeah, you're right. When Harashuk was at the draw, they were able to get string 3 or 4 goals. That game time one to tie it all at 9 was immediately off the draw win from Harashuk, where she found Carney, and they were able to tie the game up. And you're right, that 4th quarter was real nerve-wracking, just because you see Erin McQuarrie assisting Kyla Sapolsky cut the lead down to 1 with 5 minutes remaining. And, just the gritty play that happened there for the remainder of the game. It was Verhulst, I thought, had a great game, from the center of the field, and did a great job as well in her chances, at least setting up the offense.
Yeah, she got a goal and an assist out of the deal too, but she was big on draw controls, and that she is going to be spending a lot more time there because she's going up against one of the best teams in the country, and she acquitted herself very well.
Yeah, and last year as well, Allie Kennedy split time there, and obviously she's not on the team anymore. So,
right.
Draw control number 1 is going to go to her. Ellie Macera did a good job as well this game. 4 goals, 1-5 draw controls. Really scooped up the ground balls to get them.
But I can only imagine the post-game press conference with Coach Joe Spallina. First question would be, turnovers? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was an issue too, but also, again, an interesting thing, and it's probably going to set the tempo too. Again, just talking about what Stony Brook's going to have to battle with. Syracuse had 8 free position opportunities, scored twice on them. Stony Brook had 0 during the entire game.
Very, very true.
We saw that game. A game where both a Syracuse player and a Stony Brook player got ejected because of 2 yellow cards. And, for Stony Brook to get no free position opportunities at any point of the game is really interesting in my book. And it's going to have to be another thing to add on to what Stony Brook's going to have to overcome if they want to finish as champs. And again, like I said, there's a lot stacked up against Stony Brook, especially against the other powerhouses in the conference. But still, to be this close and not come away with victory, to me, it is disappointing because these girls coming in, they had it in them for sure that they could beat this team. Only a couple years ago, the Stony Brook team beat Syracuse in lacrosse, so they were planning on doing it again, and they had chances, but ultimately just couldn't come through, and they're gonna have to build on it next week.
So yeah, I think there was a couple of things that Syracuse did that was really smart on their part. Number one, defensively, I think dropping into a zone does two things. The zone defense is going to cut down on some of those penalties, right? Because you're not asking somebody to guard somebody face to face. You're not going to try and take the ball away as much. You're slowing down the offense. You're looking for the other team have to pass the ball around. And, that's where some of those turnovers come into play as well, too. So I thought that was a good move on on Syracuse's part to do that. And I kind of thought when Syracuse was so good in transition, they looked for each other so well, and at times it almost seemed like the women for the Seawolves here were kind of like in desperation mode with some of those penalties. It's like, well, it's going to be a goal or it's going to be a penalty, and it's almost like a little bit of a foul in basketball. So if I foul them well enough, then they won't score here, right? So I thought that, to be honest with you, I thought the women played a great game today. I thought they went up there, first game of the season. Matt, to your point earlier on when you spoke about some of the turnovers in the open field, that's the stuff that happens in your first game because you're not used to playing at that pace for that long. So your legs get tired, your arms get tired, and that's when you throw the ball away a little more. And I think also defensively, they were pressed today defensively. I think they reacted pretty well, and I thought their goalie played very well. Made 12 saves, and I thought they were all quality saves. But I thought it was a good game. So I'm disappointed that they lost, but I'm not, sad, and I'm not going to be able to not sleep tonight over the loss. The one thing that I thought was great for the Seawolves today in particular, 11 goals and 9 assists.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, definitely.
They're a team that's always been strong in assisting, even more so than the men's squad. Well, the men's squad, in recent memory, they're averaging about 40 to 50% on goals that are assisted. But the women's squad, especially under Spalina, is usually around the 66th percentile. So here, as you said, 9 of those 11 goals being assisted, it equates to just around 75-80%, I believe, in terms of goals assisted. And that teamwork is going to be key, especially in terms of establishing these girls who are going to step up as the next leading goal scorers to take over for the O'Millers and Kennedys that have already graduated. We saw that today with Ellie Macera, 4 goals. Reina Spella had a couple as well, which is big, getting it from a midfielder who usually is on the defensive side of the ball. Kaya Zapolsky as well had a pair. It'll be interesting to see her step that up and increase that through the coming games.
I love Erin McQuarrie's game because she reminds me of a player, of a specialist who deals from the X and in the men's game. We were talking about Tom Compatillo, Greg and I, in the game yesterday, the men's game, and very similar, getting the feeds down low. And this is a Seawolves team. I mean, you used to see both Ole Millers and Allie Kennedy and all the other great scorers for the Seawolves often just go on free shots or you just go straight up one-on-one and beat the goalie. This team doesn't rely on, number one, you're going up against the third-ranked team in the nation. You're not going to be able to take advantage anywhere near as much. And that's why I saw a different style of play. When two teams of this high level go at it, they're not going to see a lot of the cute plays you might see if they're playing a team that's vastly inferior to them. Okay, they had to be able to pick their shots and take good ones. And the net result of that is you saw better team play, I think. Better team play in a game like this than you might normally see during the regular season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like that's that 11 goal, 9 assist thing. I thought they really played well together as a team. This is before the season starts, and before the America East and all that other stuff. That's got to be why, Coach Molina puts this game on the schedule, because he wants to see, how the women are going to play in the first game. And you lost, so he's got to be upset about it. It's a gut wrenching, bus ride home, but he's also got to be pleased in some ways. It does prove that Stony Brook is at that level.
The draw controls ended up dead even.
Right. And that's big against Syracuse.
Which was not the case through most of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. There was really that ending where, Verhulst really picked it up, and the rest of the squad as well really pounced on the ball. And that's big against a team where for the past few years has been among the best in terms of winning the draw control battle. It is definitely big there. And just looking forward, they face Dartmouth next week. That's got to be a game to where they control really end to end, I think, just to, maintain one of those top spots. I don't see Stony Brook falling, obviously, too far down, if any, in the top 25 rankings.
Look, you lose by a goal on the road in Syracuse. It's about as close to, well, it's a dumb statement saying it's about as close to a win as you can get, but it is not going to be a killer loss that knocks you down the polls.
Right. They're not going down to like 15, for example.
Yeah.
But I think just in terms of the long run, this Dartmouth game has got to be a game where end to end they dominate on every aspect, and you win by score. You try to get 20 goals, try to hold them to around 10, 11-ish.
But I also like it. You get that NCAA tournament exposure in the opening game. Mm-hmm. Okay? Look, we've seen them in the NCAA tournament. This is the type of game that a BC plays, a Maryland plays, and all the other opponents that they faced. This is the type of game they're going to play. And the Seawolves prove they're up to it. Okay? They're in mid-February, and they are up to that level of play. They can go on the field with Syracuse and trade and trade punches. And that's what it was. It was toe-to-toe all the way.
And final thought for transition, but it's a great game, too, because it shows where they still need to improve for how good of a team we know this squad is. And, the turnovers were a great example there. Not getting free position opportunities is another one as well. So you probably want to see them maybe work more inside.
Well, you got to wonder about some home cooking going on there.
I agree. I'm definitely not the only one. I'm not surprised at it because look, that's happened a lot for this squad.
Look,
I will say though, like playing in the Carrier Dome is different. It's not an easy place to play. Obviously, right. Crowd situation.
Yeah. Over 5,000. Over 5,000 there.
Yeah, but a place that holds how many?
I don't know, 40.
Well, 60 plus. 30,000 for basketball alone. They cut off half of it.
Mm-hmm. It was a raucous 5,000 though. Yeah.
But but here's what I'm gonna say: the visuals in the Carrier Dome are difficult. Right, it's not easy to see that ball in that arena like that. It's just not an easy thing to do. It's a tough place to play in that regard. So that adjustment could be part of the turnover. Not that I want to give the women any excuses, but it is difficult to play in that regard for the visuals.
Yeah, so, I think it's valid points, absolutely. And again, we'll see where they build off on this next week when they host Dartmouth Sunday at noon. So a game we'll be covering on WUSB Radio. Excited for that one. And be interested to see again how they improve. And again, it's really a game going up against an unranked team where they should really dominate end to end and see a huge decrease in the turnovers, a huge increase in scoring.
Well, that's what they're going to work on.
Yeah, and I think you want to see, like you're saying, and you're 100% right, a convincing win. You want a convincing win against Dartmouth. From start to finish, you want to be in control the entire way in that game. And based on what their performance was today, you tend to believe that it's going to happen.
It wouldn't surprise me if they came out ready to stomp on every upcoming opponent, because, again, they're thinking the same way we're thinking here, that these non-conference games now matter more than ever.
Yeah,
that you have to beat. It's no longer, it would be great if we beat Syracuse on the road. They needed this win.
Yeah, this is the easy one coming up, because after that you got number 10 Florida, number 4 Northwestern starting off March.
So let's do that. We should definitely segue to men's lacrosse, because that was a game that was heard on WUSB as well. And they take on, they first of all, got the victory at Fairfield, then Robert Morris out in western Pennsylvania. And this was a game that was entirely of runs, okay? And you take a look at the scoring summary. First 7 goals, Stony Brook. Next 7 goals, Morris. And it just got streaky from there. The Seawolves came up with another 5 unanswered, but then Morris kept coming back. They couldn't really seal the deal. The third quarter, I think, sealed the deal, okay, where the Seawolves outscored Robert Morris 6-1. And Morris is playing catch-up from there. But for the first half, I mean, it's tied at 9, and you felt that Morris was caught flat-footed in the first quarter in particular, and all of a sudden they found their bearings and they started putting the ball in the net. And
Greg, you're a former coach. You got to be, seeing those runs and almost shaking your head at just with these defenses, allowing these runs to go on. What was the mindset, and where do you see the adjustments in both teams during that first half?
Yeah, I think just to start off, it seemed to me, and I was able to watch some of Robert Morris. They had film up on their website, so I watched some of them play, and I was really impressed offensively with what they were able to do. And just from my vantage point, I feel like the coaches, Anthony Gallardi and coaches, really impressed upon their players how good Robert Morris was going to be, because they came out with a level of enthusiasm that really would be difficult to match for an entire game. So let's just start with the prep work. So I think prep work wise, they were really came out ready to play. And I think that's why you saw that 7-goal run, right? Then talking to Coach Gallardi after the game was over, and just kind of like in the, outside of the locker room and whatnot, is he was like, we just couldn't do anything right in the second quarter. It's like almost like you couldn't do anything wrong, and then you couldn't do anything right. And you're looking for something to get you out of that, and then I guess the thing that got him out of it was halftime.
Yeah, because what was happening was Seawolves were getting stops in their zone. They were able to stop Morris on several possessions, and then all of a sudden it started turning the other way, and it was Morris who were getting the stops and the turnovers and things like that. So it was complete role reversal.
Yeah. You see, too, just that first half, Stony Brook was so dominant on offense, had 14 shots in the first quarter. And then you look at the second, and looking at the shots on goal, Robert Morris outshot Stony Brook 14-4.
It felt like a basketball game where a team goes ahead in the first 10 minutes of the first half in college basketball, and it's like, wow, they're doomed to get caught up to. They just came out too fast, too soon, and they were going to get. And that's what
like
happened.
Stony Brook men's basketball sometimes.
Yeah, in the men's game the other day, it was like they had 7 goals halfway through the first quarter, and you just can't keep that pace up. And nor is Robert Morris going to play that poorly for 4 quarters. So you knew that they were going to come back.
We thought going in, just judging from their performance over the previous 2 games and what Greg saw on the video, that this was going to be a very closely matched game. That these 2 teams were very, very, in terms of talent level, were very, very even. And that really showed. But streaky, too.
Yeah, and for both of you, we'll start with Greg. What do you think was the biggest adjustment that you saw Stony Brook make to ultimately get the victory and really control the third quarter?
Well, I think one of the things that they for the entire game, I was not confident. Really, I shouldn't say I wasn't confident. I just thought that the face-off guy for Robert Morris, Bo Columbus, he physically dominant and had been playing really well, and I thought that was going to be a big plus for Robert Morris. And Renz Conlon came and he really played well, won 20 out of 34 faceoffs, and that was a big advantage for Stony Brook. So I would say that would be one of the differences. I felt like in the second quarter they had gotten sloppy offensively and threw the ball away, and they allowed
4 turnovers.
Robert Morris to get back in transition. But not only the 4 turnovers, so they took shots as well too that were just poor shots, not on goal, not in rhythm. So they may not be seen as a turnover, but they just weren't clicking. They weren't playing right. And then Robert Morris started to go. But in the third quarter,
well, you know what else? The Yes, especially in the fourth quarter. They were making mistakes all over the place. I remember that ball Merle dug out of the far corner in the Stony Brook zone and kept it from going out of bounds. The only problem is it wound up in the stick. I believe it was Corson Keeley on the fly and right in the net.
He had a great game. 6 goals that contest.
Yeah. But it is true, too, that Morris's scoring was really concentrated in the hands of 2 guys, while the Seawolves was very nicely distributed up and down the roster.
Yeah, 9 goal scorers in the game. And Armitage gets 3 with a hat trick. Paulinetti gets 3. McCannell gets 3. Paulinetti, McCannell, those are the guys that you're anticipating are going to be scoring, Ken. But then when you start to see McMahon get a goal, DeMayo get a goal, Pearson get a goal, Merrill get a goal.
Anderson got 2.
Yeah, and Anderson with 2. But, that's 5 for Anderson in the first 2 games. Mm-hmm. So he might just become – what I'm noticing with Anderson, and if you're a lacrosse guy, this is something you pick up on. McCannell is getting the long pole, and Anderson's getting the short pole, and he's taking advantage of the short pole.
Mm-hmm. Agreed, 100%.
It'll be interesting to see what happens when teams have a short stick D-midi that can – because he is super quick, Anderson. He has got a great
Yeah, I was going to say,
step.
He was blazing. Really last night Brazil than yesterday, but still.
But he has such a good first step. If there's somebody that can cover him, I really think that he's one of the guys that's getting the offense going because he can force the defense to slide. He's got his head up. They move the ball twice to an open guy. I think that's why Armitage gets a couple, 3 goals because other people are initiating and he's the benefactor of that.
Kevin Mack as well, big reason for that. 4 assists on the afternoon. He's a great guy where, he draws defenders towards him and opens up lanes for guys like Speedy Anderson or Noah Armitage.
I like Anderson. I like what McConnell was able to do. But the other thing that really impressed me was the defense. Guys like Sabella Stewart-Williams. I liked that tandem, too, in the Stony Brook zone.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a little while for them to mesh together. Because offensively, they just have so much firepower. It's going to be the ball is going to be humming around. It's going to look good. When a guy is off their game, somebody else is going to be able to step up and make plays happen. I think people get a lot of credit for coaching offense. I think offense, if you have good players, it's very easy to coach. Defensively, though, it takes work to get your defensemen to play together. And they're starting to get there. You're seeing good phases of them where they're playing excellent defense, right? And I think Palmer in the goal made 17 saves yesterday. And then,
a couple of real nice ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you like that, too, as a goalies coach, right? Seeing Palmer put his body in the line of fire, made a great diving goal, too, in that third quarter.
Yeah, and not every save is created equal, right? So a couple of those saves in the third quarter make a big deal because that gives you the opportunity to extend that lead and be comfortable in the fourth quarter that you're not going to lose it. But they're very athletic defensively.
Yeah,
and they do a nice job. I just think that they have to learn how to play together as well too, because Merle's the short stick D-midi from Virginia.
Yeah, transfer.
He's an excellent athlete. He's got great size and speed. But then you add him and you add Williams as well too. These are 2 guys that now 2 of your 6 defensive players are new, and that you have to kind of work them in. And the only way you can work them in is by playing them. And you play them, and they're going to make mistakes, and then they're going to correct those mistakes, and on, and they're going to improve as the year goes on. So I think.
Yep.
I'm sorry. You keep.
No, I was going to say not even that, but even a guy like John Stewart, is coming in and replacing the role of the starters of last year. Guys like Cassidy, Tranquil, O'Leary, they're not on the team anymore through graduation or transfer. So, a lot of that defense this is really their first time moving up into the first line.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So you're really looking at multiple players who are being forced to be leaders within that group, and they have to communicate well to each other. Athletically, it's important, obviously, to be a good athlete and have good feet and stuff when you're playing defense. But the bigger piece of it is communication, and feeling each other through the defense. And I think that's going to be the next phase. When they start communicating well with each other, you're going to see it on the field because they're going to cover for each other and cover each other's mistakes.
Now, going back to offense, question for you guys. Dylan Palinetti, 3 goals, 6 points, 17 shots. Is that too much?
I don't know. This is a tough call because he is the face of the franchise. He is the guy. First of all, the offensive sequence goes through him. He makes a lot of decisions out there. So in situations where you need a goal, you want your best guy on it. But like I said, that whole Townsend story with Kevin Crowley, but because they have so many options, maybe Palinetti doesn't have to take quite as many shots. And that could be a transition for him as well, that he doesn't necessarily have to be the guy all the time. I mean, by contrast, you take a look at a Morris and Corson Keeley and Taggart Clark. Well, they have to be there because, nobody else has their scoring capability. That's not the case with the Seawolves. You rather have 3 guys with 3 goals than 1 guy with 9 goals. Because it means you're playing better. It means the lines are all producing. And it also means they can't key on just one guy. Or, the whole Jordan versus Pippen. Give Jordan his points, but concentrate on Pippen. Well, you can't do that with the Stony Brook Seawolves. And it also means that Palinetti can start drawing defenses his way, more his way. And let them think he's the go-to guy and get burned by somebody else.
I think it's only too many shots if other guys aren't scoring.
Mm.
So when you're seeing McCannell with 3, Armitage with 3, Mack with 2, Anderson with 2, I mean, guys are producing. Are there times where I think he's taking a shot that's an ill-advised shot? Yeah, but shoot or shoot. Just like Mack is going to take some, throw some feeds that are maybe ill-advised feeds. That's a guy who feeds. That's what they do. I don't know. They're like, it'd be hard to pull them back in.
Yeah, I would say he's a guy who's never been afraid to shoot, but it's going to be big too, especially for the weekend they got coming up on Friday, taking on the 0-2 St. John's Red Storm, 6 p.m. on WUSB Sports. But afterwards as well, Sunday, facing one of Hofstra or LIU. Probably, as soon as Stony Brook wins, they'll be facing Hofstra. If they lose, they're probably facing LIU.
That's actually a problem for us because I believe the final is scheduled for the same time. It'll conflict directly with the women's lacrosse game against Dartmouth. So we'll do the home game against Dartmouth, and we just have to figure out how the Seawolves fare because, yes, a win seems likely here on Friday, and there may be a conflict between the two.
Yeah, but the Red Storm defense that's really been struggling. Gave up 23 goals to both number 9 Rutgers and the receiving Volt Bucknell Bison. So Stony Brook, they're gonna have a fun weekend for sure. And I think just the LI Cup, we talked about it a lot. Don't get too in depth with it, but man, what an exciting weekend of action we're gonna have coming up, Greg.
It was interesting when we spoke to Mike McCannell after the game was over on Saturday. He brought it up immediately. He was excited about that. There was something for them to be able to say that we're the best team on the island. And it seemed very important for them to be able to say, listen, that we want this thing. We want to be able to, and they have on their shirts like defend the island, but it seems to be like just a mantra for them. Right. We're certain in basketball, you hear guys say that they want to be the Maryland state champion, right? They want to beat all the teams in Maryland. For them, they want to be able to dominate Long Island, and why not? Because it is first off, half the team is from Long Island,
right?
So they want to be able to say that we got the best team in Long Island because it is about bragging rights because everybody who's playing in this game.
Exactly, I think it's the biggest thing too, which makes it so cool. Is I said this a lot when Stony Brook faced Hofstra, but this is really all-star weekend for the Long Island teams. We saw it in the NBA earlier today. But, for these 4 squads, it's a lot of local talent on St. John's, LIU, Hofstra, and Stony Brook. So, as he said, it's a lot of guys who already know each other and have deep backgrounds from the local schools getting to compete against each other one more time and representing, I think, the strengths of Long Island lacrosse, Matt.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, is that this may be a one-year deal. Only because Stony Brook and Hofstra are going to be in the CAA together next year. So I don't see them saying, oh, yeah, well, you'll have a tournament and we'll count it as a conference game too. That's probably not going to work. So there may be a Long Island Challenge, but Stony Brook may not be able to participate in it as Hofstra is the host school. I think it's their concept. So it might be like the Lap Trick tournament for St. John's. Okay, you can't have Big East opponents. It was a tournament that they would play 3 teams that were vastly inferior to them, and they'd win the tournament every year, except for 1 year when St. John's was having a down year when they lost it. Then it died. But this is a nice thing, a nice concept for Long Island. Unfortunately, because Stony Brook and Hofstra are going to be in the same conference, it could be a one-shot deal.
The only other way you would work that out, and it's like because I actually put some thought into this because after the guys were so excited about it the other day, unless you say Hofstra and Stony Brook is going to be the first game of the weekend. You're going to play that conference game. You're going to play it first, and then whatever happens with the game on Sunday happens with the game on Sunday. This way, you both have equal footing going into the game.
Agreed. I also think, too, you can make it work if that's it. But also, you're going to have to move the tournament down from the beginning of the season to probably the middle of March. Just looking at how Stony Brook's schedule is structured this season, where, your first conference game is March 16th. So, you got to imagine and plan around maybe that week.
The problem with that, though, is that you want Stony Brook and Hofstra to meet in the final because they would be the 2 best teams of the 4 you invite. The problem there is you're right. The big what if comes into play. What if one of the teams doesn't do its job in the semis and they don't meet in the final? Then what do you do? Because they have to play each other as a regularly scheduled conference game.
Right.
So, yeah, it can be tricky.
Alternate date? Is there like an alternate date in case they don't play each other? I also think since it's a conference game and it's a premium game then for the CAA, you're probably going to have to win that game to get into the CAA tournament.
Very true.
Between you don't want to play that game 2 days after a different game.
No, you really want that.
You really want a week in between
the featured game on set. Well, ironically enough, that Stony Brook Hofstra game was a big pain in the neck because it was often played midweek, just prior to the last regular season conference game, which usually was Albany. So you play Hofstra on Wednesday and Albany on Saturday.
Right.
That happened a lot.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, though, seeing this weekend, just the intensity it brings, and obviously exciting to be able to cover it. You guys on the call for that.
Yes, we're going to be doing it live from Sherwood Stadium, and it will be a 6 o'clock start simply because we want to let Democracy Now! Run in its entirety. So no pregame, we're going to go hit the ground running.